Hey, welcome back to Ready Room. We used to do this about a year ago. I used to do it with Mike occasionally, just a 10-15 minute conversation about a topic. So I've replaced Mike Glover with somebody much more handsome and probably taller. I think you're taller.
I'm taller.
I think you are.
And slightly less Asian.
Slightly.
Mike's duties have been reduced in the company. He's taking on lesser roles. I'm here now.
This Ready Room is sponsored by Fieldcraft Survival, a Fieldcraft Survival mug.
But he's drinking tea.
I'm drinking tea. Yes, I am.
I'm drinking coffee like
real men drink tea.
Like a man.
Americans have a chip on their shoulder about tea. Get over it, man. It was like 250 years ago.
Come on, whatever. Live in the now.
All right. So, what's the topic of conversation?
I've been thinking a lot about law enforcement lately, as far as the evolving threat that they're seeing.
Okay.
I mean, I just, not being from that background, I see that I can only imagine as a law enforcement officer today, the different threats that they're seeing are things that we saw downrange. Mm-hmm. All the things that are happening. This has been like the deadly. I don't know if the stats accurate or not, but it's been almost maybe the deadliest year for law enforcement.
Yeah.
Around the country for shootings and these officers getting killed.
Last year was pretty bad too. Did you ever think about going down that road, that career path?
Briefly.
Really?
Like when I was first in the Army, my first 4 years, like everybody else, I was going to get out and briefly thought about going into law enforcement.
Yeah.
But they had this whole got to have a college degree thing. And too smart for college.
When I was growing up in Ireland, I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a cop in Ireland, the Gardaí to call them, right? But you had to speak Gaelic, right? Which is the official, not the official, but it's kind of the lost language of Ireland. But it was a requirement for a government job. So I was like, I'm not doing that. And I'm glad, because the Gardaí were a bit of a joke in Ireland, at least when I was growing up. And nobody had any respect for them. I remember, man, I got some stories. I remember one time when I was like 16, there was like 12 or 13 of us like walking from the bar. Be a cultural stereotype here, we're all drunk. And freaking hooligans, like straight up hooligans. Yeah. And the cop car pulled past, right? And they put the window down. The Gardaí were like, where are you lads going? That's my best Irish accent. And somebody said, F off, pig. We'll beat your ass. And then everybody started yelling at them and throwing shit. I was like stunned. And then they just took off. But they would beat your ass. Like if you get arrested, they had no problem hitting you with that freaking stick thing they had, but they weren't armed.
That's like the police in Germany when I was in the army in Germany at 17, and they would beat the crap out of you.
Yeah, when I was in Germany, I was an NCO, and private to go to the formation on a Monday morning, and they'd be split open with stitches. I'd be like, were you arguing with the pull inside?
Yeah. Did you think you were going to win that? Playing ring around the cop car, running from them.
Yeah. But in America it has evolved. Like, it's not Barney Fife anymore with his one bullet in his pocket, right? So cops have gotten more heavily armed and more militarized. I don't like that term because it's a very anti-police term, but
I think they're evolving to the threat. Like, they have to.
I think you have to. Yeah. You have to. Like, you can't be outgunned, right, by cartels and gangs and all that. But that equipment and all that stuff is no good without the training to back it up, right? Yeah. And it's a difficult job because you're doing everything from traffic stops to my bike got stolen to freaking gunfire and armed robbery.
Well, and not to mention the microscope that you're under.
Yeah.
Anything and everything they do is like, they got to prove themselves innocent. A split second decision, they can lose their entire life. Yeah. I mean, not only like literally get killed, but in my opinion, worse, they can lose their livelihood, they can lose their family, they can be in jail, they can all that and all of it. So they got to have a hard time, like, with that mind shift, that mindset that we talk about all the time. Law enforcement can't go out on the street and go, I'm going to be in an offensive mindset today. I'm really going to take it to the bad guys. I'm going to arrest. They can't go into their job like that, I wouldn't think.
No.
Whereas, like, when we were loading up on a helicopter to go into Solder City, we were like, we're going to take it to them. We're going there. We're going to win this. And if we were ever on the defensive, it was generally because we made a bad tactical decision that put us there. Or we made a bad call or things just changed. But rarely were we just like went in on the defense. Let's wait to see what they do first before we react. It was never like that.
No.
So we could always go in at a 10 and bring it down to a 6 or a 7 if we needed to. Law enforcement kind of has to go into every situation, at a low level or, at a 5 and then ramp it up as required. But that's a reactionary reaction that they have to make, which has got to be hard on them.
Yeah, you pull somebody over for speeding, and as you walk up to that car, again, never been a cop, but it could be, it could be a little old lady who didn't realize she was speeding, or it could be a felon with a warrant, armed, who's willing to do anything not to go back to jail. You know what I mean? So it's a very difficult job. And like the personal security course we're doing now, which deals with a lot of, when to draw that gun and fire or don't fire and all that. People really get an idea of how difficult that decision is, Well,
like you said, there's a point. Yeah. There's a line in the sand where, like, before that line, you're really over aggressive, but after that line, you're in a really bad situation that could end your life or have bad things happen to you. So you got a small window to kind of decide if the criteria is there that need to be there for you to pull that firearm and do what you have to do. Yeah. Whereas in law enforcement, it's the same thing. Yeah. I mean, they got that critical second where they got to decide, okay, what's this person going to do and how do I deal with it? And the only way for them to ever get better at that is training. And from talking to some law enforcement agencies around the country, we've been getting a lot of influx from law enforcement lately. I just got off of a call with some law enforcement agencies, and the biggest thing with them is, like any organization, is everybody seems to want to cut training, like it's going to save money. And it may save some money in the near term, but that officer is less prepared. It's like putting them out on the street with no shoes. Yeah. I mean, nobody would go, hey, we need to save money. Let's take all the shoes away from the officers. Yeah. But they'll go in there and be like, hey, no more dedicated training.
We've seen that in special operations. Yeah. It's easy when funding gets tight. It's easy to cut training because nobody really notices. And you can always say, oh, we'll train internally or something like that. And you just keep recycling the same training.
Or you can lie to yourself and act like you're not cutting training.
Yes. What they do. Or you can try to replace training with equipment, which doesn't help, right?
No.
And we've seen that a lot too. We give you all this gear, and then there's no training that goes with it, and you're using that equipment to a fraction of its capability because you just you're not
equipment
trained.
complements your training. Like I said, if you're really trained with a sharp stick, I want you on my side. If you're untrained with a firearm, because you're going to be better at it. So what type of training are law enforcement looking for now? Because that's all your stuff. And I know you've been doing having a lot of conversations, and you went out to Wyoming and talked to those guys. Wyoming was really interested in vehicle stuff because they gave me a stat, and I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but it was like 72% of the shootings or something are in and around a vehicle. So law enforcement, I think they've always known it. It's just I think they're taking a step forward to kind of fix it. Is how am I going to? Chances are, if I'm in an engagement, I'm going to be in and or around my vehicle, and we're seeing that with a lot of ambushes of officers and all their incidents, high-speed chases and things. So they have to know how to operate within that vehicle and around that vehicle. So there's just not a lot of training on that. I mean, they just don't. A lot of law enforcement agencies and a lot of people in general go to a range, it's flat range, and they get out there and they put a target out and they draw from the holster. They do basic marksmanship stuff. But how are you going to move and be dynamic in and around that vehicle? Whether you're taking fire, you have to use it for cover, have to find a better way to use that vehicle to your advantage instead of a disadvantage. I think a lot of agencies are starting to see that as
the Gunfighter 2 course does some vehicle stuff, and I was at that AI a year or so ago, and we only had so many cars, right? But we were going to have somebody up, shooting through glass, and there was a female police officer there. She was like, "I've never shot through glass." Yeah. And they spend a lot of time in their car, so I was like, "Boom, you're up." Yep. And she was able to engage through the front windshield, through the side. Yep. It's very important to do that. It's funny. Another story just came to mind. Like in Ireland in the 90s, like when I grew up in Ireland, there wasn't a lot of drugs, right? There was a little bit of weed here and there. Alcohol was the beverage of choice, right?
It is Ireland.
Hey, yes, it is. So in the 90s it started really ramping up, right? Early 90s, and hard drugs and heroin and all that were coming in, and they brought I can't remember the name, don't make me lie, but they brought one of the top police officers from New York City, I think, over to give advice. How do we get ahead of this? Now you can never completely stop it, right? But if you get ahead of it early enough, is what they were thinking, that we can stop it coming in because it is an island and all that. And he went and gave them a big briefing on SWAT teams and drug enforcement agencies and they're like, oh no, we can't do that. That's unnecessary. It's flooded with drugs now, like every other country, right? Yeah. So so there is a level where I mean, what's the level for police that's too much? Like, because you'll see police agencies with armored vehicles, night vision goggles, lasers, carbines, almost like the military.
Yeah.
Is there a level? Or does the enemy dictate that?
I think the enemy kind of dictates that, and I think honestly, our society kind of dictates that, because and every agency is different. There's no standardization across the country. I mean, nor I don't think there ever could be.
No.
It's just you get one community that, in certain areas of the country, that there's certain things that are acceptable for police, and there's other areas of the country that there's other things that are acceptable. Now, it's never acceptable to be over aggressive with citizens of the country.
No.
I mean, you got to enforce the laws, and there has to be a level there where you need to understand.
But that's a mutual respect.
But that's a mutual respect. But when they're on the receiving end of so much that they are, is every law enforcement decision perfect? Nope. But they're human beings, and they got to have the training to enable them to go out there on the street and do their job every day and do it to the best of their capability. Like even with the vehicle dynamic stuff that we're teaching, it's so important now that we're breaking it off into its own course. We're going to do a vehicle dynamic only course. That's all we're going to teach in that, because there's so many nuances to it that I think the average citizen can use. There's a lot of special operations people and a lot of even SWAT types and executive protection people that have done training like that, and they've been doing it for a while. But the average patrol officer probably doesn't have a lot of experience in that.
Yeah.
Even the average citizen, this is a dynamic that even in the company is kind of tough for us to look at. What should we be training the average civilian on, and what shouldn't we?
Yeah, my line of understanding, we've talked about this, is I don't train anybody on military tactics, right?
Yeah.
So don't hit me up, which I've been hit and asked me to train you on ambushes, raids, sniper operations. I'll
even CQB.
CQB is an offensive military operation. Not. I'll teach you how to defend your home.
Yeah.
But I'm not teaching you CQB. That's a military operation. You don't need to learn that, right? So, in my opinion, right? So, it is a fine line, right? I don't want to be, kind of going down that road. It's funny because I grew up in a country where the cops didn't have guns. The regular cops, they were detectives with some machine guns, and I grew up in a very violent time in Ireland with the whole Northern Ireland thing. That when I was in the army in Ireland, in the infantry, before I went to special operations, I patrolled the border a lot, and we had very standard operating procedures. That we were in Land Rovers, old beat up Land Rovers. The cops would take off in a high speed chase, and the Land Rovers would chuggle along at 55 miles an hour. And there was an incident where the cops took off, and the two Land Rovers couldn't keep up. Yeah. And then they lost the cops, and they went around. They found them eventually bound and gagged on the side of the road because they chased the IRA down, and they got out with guns, and they're like, all right,
you win.
Yeah, we were laughing, and we're like, why is that guy wearing a ski mask? There's no skiing for miles,
Plus, there's not even a mountain around here.
But the military were there as an armed escort for the police.
Wow. And imagine that.
I know, right? Yeah. We used to have to go to the bank and get the armored trucks have no guns, so they get a military escort for taking cash out of the bank and moving it around. This is what I used to do, and then we'd get an armed escort if a quarry was using explosives. That we would go pick it up. We would go there. It would get used. Anything left would get burned on site. And that was one of the duties I did when I was in the infantry. It was weird. When you think back now, it was super weird.
It's funny like that, getting money for payday. It was like in Baghdad when we first got with the ICTF. Yeah. There was a period of time where we had to go to the bank, and military vehicles would go in there, and we'd get like kit bags full of cash, and we'd escort it back to Area 4, and then do the old stand in line and
Was it American currency or was it dinar or?
It was dinar. Yeah. And then the first payday that. Yeah. The MOD took over. Oh, the money's gone. Disappeared.
Yeah, no fraud at all.
How did that happen?
You don't understand. Like
weird how that works.
Yeah, that's part of the culture over there.
Yeah,
almost,
it's like
It's we're going down the ICTF road.
Yeah.
So law enforcement have a tough job. They need to match the threat that they're going up against, and they need training, and more training. It was very standard for us. We trained all the time. It's not like a cop goes through. I imagine a cop goes through the academy. You're tied to whatever you learn there, mostly because you go do your job. Now, they get advanced training with SWAT teams and all that kind of thing, but also the SWAT teams are also kind of bound by whatever training has been institutionalized, and it's just getting recycled and recycled. We did it when I was in SF in Ireland. We did a lot of that, And then we started sending guys to the GIGN, the GSG9, the Germans and French, and even England to get trained. They would come back, and it totally revamped all the training we were doing. You've got to be able to reach out.
You have to be. You have to evolve in your training. And I tell people all the time, name one thing that you do the same way that you did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
One thing in your daily life. I bet you're hard pressed to find one thing that you do the same today that you did 20 years ago. Exactly. So I don't know what it is with training that everybody just goes, well, that's what I learned and that's it. It's never going to evolve.
I'm trained.
Do you have the same phone you have 20 years ago? Do you have the same car? Everything evolves. Things change.
Learn from somebody else's mistakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I will tell you.
How many tactics do we learn in the schoolhouse that when we went to combat turned out to not be a good idea?
Everything changed.
Not be a good idea.
Around after once the GWAT started, in the next couple of years we changed just about everything we did.
I can't think of much that stayed the same.
No.
And sometimes we changed between rotations just because that was the threat that we were dealing with. It wasn't like we got rid of everything we knew. It's just we had to morph and evolve a little bit. And I think with training with civilians and with law enforcement, it's really easy in any of those in any organization, even in the military, to be in a training house and you're the expert at what you're doing.
Yeah.
You've been training in a certain way. It's a little bit of a hassle to like rewrite things and do it a different way. And but you really got to fight against that. You owe it to the person going out there.
I remember when we were trying to change sniper school, because we were at sniper school together. You ran sniper school, I was one of the instructors, and we were trying to revamp a very institutionalized system. And I remember you brought up, I don't know if you ever showed me that picture, but you were telling me that you found a picture online of a guy doing CQB from the 70s, and he had green beret on in 1911.
Yeah,
and he was standing in the middle of the room like this, and we're like, we don't do CQB like that
that's
anymore.
not like that anymore.
I want to see that picture.
Yeah. It was just, but people, and I think the best thing you can do, and I think as a company, even in the industry, training industry, you have to look at the evolving threat, and you got to kind of morph things. There's a lot of people on our side of the industry that they're like, this is what I know, this is what I teach, this is how it is. The people that are good at this understand that what you learned 15 years ago, even though you're awesome at it, you might have to morph it a little bit. You might have to look at what's going on.
No such thing as always, no such thing as never. I actually learned that in Sephardic. And if you train with people and they say, this is how it has to be done, you have to hold a gun this way every time, this is the only way, then you probably want to find somebody else.
Yeah, because this is a way.
Yeah.
And also, I think I encourage agencies to get out there and look at venues that they can train with, not just one. Not just one person that habitually comes back. Yeah, I'd love for you to sign a 10-year contract with Fieldcraft and we're the only people that train you. But that's doing you a disservice. I want you to train with Fieldcraft, but I also want you to see other people. I want you to take things that we teach you, things that other people teach you. As long as at the end of the day you go home and you take your gun belt off and you take your armor off and you eat dinner with your family and you go to sleep, that's all that I care about.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the way you got to look at it in this industry.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to do a couple of these kind of short format chats. I think the next one we're going to talk about the Special Operations Sniper course, which we were both involved in the very first one, and you've been involved since pretty much. Yeah. How many years now?
2009 to 2022.
13
years.
13 years in a row. So we're going to talk about that next one. And that'll be super interesting. But until then, thanks for tuning in. Stay alert, stay alive.